This is Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium.
Today's guest is Sammy Lee. Sammy is the drummer of Red Rain. Richmond, Virginia-based rockers, Red Rain takes 80s influences but steers them in a more contemporary direction. Bridging the sounds of yesterday and today, they can compete with the current active rock radio climate. Comprised of members, singer-guitarist Carlton Bubba McMichael, guitarist Stevie Shred, bassist Larry Moore, and drummer Sammy Lee, Red Rain has worked with Grammy Award-nominated multi-platinum producer David Ivory on both of the releases, 2021 self-titled EP and 2023 full-length Don't Look Back, and have either worked with or shared the stage with the likes of Dokken, Extreme, Jackyl, Lita Ford and Tesla, and many others. It's a pleasure to have you on, Sammy.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Catherine.
Thank you so much. You know, it's so exciting. When I started doing the deep dive on Red Rain, I was like really blown away because I'm really a girl of the 80s. And you really have brought back that sound to life. Listening to different songs, you know, I'm like, I could hear a little of this in, a little of that in, but it really has its own original sound to it. And the piece of your band that I love so much is that your motto has been that you will always play original songs and that you're not a covered band and that you don't do cover songs and that you don't want to take requests for that because you are true blue to being an original band. So I can't wait for the audience to hear how you guys got discovered and how your journey and your path has been.
So, yeah, thank you for saying that because that is a big point for us. I've obviously been in and out of bands for years. The singer and I, Bubba McMichael, were in and out of bands. But Bubba had written a song that we had played and we just couldn't get it out of our mind. You know, during a lull of one band to another, Bubba and I we were just like, we got to get this recorded. We got to get it recorded. We since then had found Larry Moore, the bass player, started to get the ball rolling. We did a self-titled, self-produced CD that we never really released. It was called Chasing Shadows. And then I have a friend to help get started, two friends of Chris Aiken and Wendell Neely of the Classic Metal Show, who helped us take the raw material and send it to a couple people in the industry. And we ended up signing with Chip Ruggieri of Chipster PR. Chip helped us get the ball rolling. We took some of the songs off Chasing Shadows, and we were introduced to David Ivory, who is an unbelievable producer. And we reworked the songs in a manner that David didn't change the idea of the songs. It was more of, we got to cut this, we add this and all that. And that's how the first EP came out. And that's how we sort of got discovered. And then right after the EP came out, we hit our first tour with Tesla. And then the ball rolled from there.
So this first song, which one was it?
So the first song off the EP was a song called Not That Way. It's got that 80s feel, but it's, you know, radio friendlier than some of the other stuff. But that's the song that seems to get a lot of people's attention and was getting the attention until we recorded the new album, the full-length album of Don't Look Back.
So what is the theme of the song that you feel is kind of not just the sound that catches people's attention, but sometimes it's the lyrics. You walk away and you can't get that couple of sentences out of your head. So what is it about that song, your first song?
So our singer does a lot of the songs. A lot of our songs are relationship-based songs on the first EP, and then I'll explain some of the other songs on the newer album. Most of the first EP was about relationships. So we have a song called Toxic. The relationship was toxic, both on the male and female's part. So Not That Way was basically a song that Bubba had written about a young boy who was growing up and wanted to pursue a career, whether it be, you know, let's say music, movie, an actor, whatever, and was in love with a young lady. And, you know, the young lady basically looked at him and was like, you know, you're really not going anywhere. And she moved on. And then eventually the guy he hit whether he was a rock star or whatever he did. And then she comes back around like, oh, you know, you've made it. Let's try this again. And it's not that way. His life's moved on and he realizes that she was in it maybe for a different reason than he was. It's not that way anymore. So that's where the song came from.
I love that. It's such a current concept when you talk to people because of social media and because of Facebook. So many people are finding each other after grammar school 30, 40 years later, and they're like,
Right.
oh, wow, So that idea of someone coming back around or finding someone again, to me, is so realistic, especially now. People don't realize even friends that know friends. I've had a lot of friends that end up in a dating situation, and you were friends with this one and you also knew their partner. Is like, wait a minute, how did these two never get together? So
Right.
the circles sometimes are very small.
Exactly. And with today's world, that's exactly where I think he was going with it. But listen, a lot of the songs are, boy meets girl, girl meets boy. So
That's great.
old,
One
old
thing you
stories.
said earlier when we were kind of just talking in the intro was that you had had a band before this band. Out of all the band members, who was the original one that you were with in the other band? Was that Bubba?
Just Bubba.
Okay. And what kind of a
Only Bubba.
band was that?
It was a band similar to Red Rain, but it was more 50-50. So we did play some covers, but we also did some originals. Those originals did not carry over to Red Rain. The band was called Seth, Seth. We did put a local EP out. Towards the end, we did write this one song that Bub and I couldn't get out of our head, and that carried over to Red Rain. That song actually got divided into two songs on the EP, which part of this song we couldn't piece together. Part of it went to Not That Way, and the other part went to the title track Red Rain. That's how that ball kind of started rolling as well. But yeah, it was just Bubba and I.
Wow. So where did you meet Bubba?
Oh my God, I've known Bubba. I don't want to date myself, but I've known Bubba a long time. We played in local bands, different bands over the years back in the day. And actually, it's a funny story, and we talk about it, but I was in a band and we needed another guitar player. When I first met him, Bubba was a lead guitarist, backup vocalist, lead guitarist, phenomenal guitar player. And I'll get into that as well, which I'm very lucky with Stevie and Bubba because they're both phenomenal. But Bubba's a lightning shred guitar player, and that's how I first met him. And an old local bar band I was in, we needed a guitar player, and he came by, and it just didn't fit for him, and it didn't fit for us at the time. That's when I first met him. And again, I don't want to date myself, years and years ago. We just were always in different bands. I don't want to say rival bands, but you know what I mean. There would be like a bar show with like 4 or 5 bands, and he'd be on it, we'd be on it. We always talked, and then a mutual friend of mine and his, who really started the band, Seth, brought Bubba in, and then we just, we connected. Bubba and I are very close, known each other a long time, great relationship. Red Rain in general is a very close band, but Bubba and I have known each other longer than that, so it's a good brotherhood.
So how did you pick up the other members of Red Rain?
So Larry, I'm sure he won't mind saying this. Larry was a musician for years so we're from Richmond, Virginia. So in the Richmond area and the Tidewater area, which is the Virginia Beach, Norfolk area. Larry's played in a lot of bands. Larry's sort of, I say kind of claim to fame, is Larry was the original bass player of a band called White Heat in Richmond. And if you don't know who White Heat is, you can look them up, but White Heat turned into Firehouse. So Larry was the actual first bass player of that band. Never made it to the Firehouse stuff, but just a well-known musician. And we were looking for somebody, and we had asked some people, and Bubba had put a little something out in the local, and we'd heard his name, and he answered and came by. And so for a while, it was really a trio. And then as we had progressed and written the material for the EP, there was a local band at the time who was really making a lot of waves in Richmond. And Stevie was in that band. And a mutual friend of mine was very close to him. And that his band really had a great run. Big, original cover band, lot of attendance, a lot of people. But they had sort of called it quits. And my friend said, "Hey, why don't you call Stevie?" And I called him, and Stevie, after a little talking to, because he had just ended this run and they were traveling quite a bit, we kind of prodded him to come in, and he came in and was a great fit. And so we've been together for 12 years. It's been a great run.
That's great. So are they all local to the Richmond area?
So yes, at the time, yes. So I'll say that. They all lived in Richmond, and Bubba and Larry and I are still here. Stevie has moved out of the city since then, actually out of state. But we make it work. He's been, when we have a show like we have one coming up, he'll come in, we rehearse. Nothing has fallen through the cracks, and everything's pretty much as normal. So we're all good.
That's great. When you look at your timeline, if you guys got together, would you say that Red Rain started in 2009 or was it later?
That was later. It was later.
So was it 2013?
It was about 2013, 2014 is when the trio got together. The full band really wasn't together till like 2015, 2016, somewhere there. I'm sorry, don't remember the exact dates.
Yeah, no, it's good.
But in that time frame.
Yeah, just to give the audience an understanding that you've been together, the current band, for at least 10 years, or around about 10 years. And it's interesting when you start looking at being able to make the connections, getting together with Chipster, getting together with having, this amazing, multi-platinum producer, David Ivory, work on the releases. I mean, it kind of is like a whirlwind. How did you feel when that started happening?
It's a surreal feeling, being in Richmond. Richmond's produced some really good bands, just so people know. I mean, obviously Firehouse, like I mentioned. Firehouse, they said they're from North Carolina, but the guys are from Richmond. Guar is from Richmond. Lamb of God is from Richmond. So they've produced some really good bands. When we came out, obviously the 80s type style music, wasn't at the forefront. So we kicked and scratched, and it really started to roll for us when we got Chip Ruggieri with us from Chipster PR. I don't want to talk too much about Chip. I don't like to get too much in that business, but we developed such a close relationship. Chip and I, we talk all the time. I do a lot of the business work for the band. I do actually all of it. So Chip and I talk all the time, or David Ivory and I talk all the time. So when Chip introduced us to David and we actually went to his studio the first time, yeah, it's nerve-wracking because this guy's, Grammy nominated, and you're like, our thought was he's going to change everything. It's not going to be what we wanted. And luckily, it never ended like that. But it is. It's a surreal feeling. And the path that we have traveled since then is even more surreal.
Yeah, sometimes I believe that things happen for a reason. A lot of times people question, well, why didn't it happen earlier or whatever? And sometimes in speaking, especially with musicians, in retrospect, they're happy that it happened at the time it did, because either things were happening in their personal life or things they felt that maybe the timing of music wouldn't have worked. So it's really on a wing and a prayer sometimes when these breaks happen. But it definitely looks like you really had a special kind of relationship with these people.
And that's big. It's not just about music and producing music. We were lucky enough to meet Dave. So the way it worked is we had a phone call. We set up with David. We got to meet him sort of, via phone call. And then we went up there. And, I guess the phone call helps, but we just hit it off. And, and he got an understanding of what we were looking for. We definitely got a dose of what he was looking for. And I think that works. And it's not, one of the, I think, things that, and again, I'm sure every band does this, but out of our band especially is, we play music that we like. You know what I mean? So we're not looking to try it. And again, I don't know if everybody at that band does this. I just know for us, we're not looking to we're not trying to write the biggest hit. We're not trying to write the biggest radio thing. We're playing music that we like, that we think sound good, and because obviously if we don't like it, then we can't sell it, and so on and so on. And David helps, helps us with that as well.
Yes. I find it interesting because everyone has kind of their own idea of how things are going to, sound to someone. So when you started working, and this is to help a lot of young artists that are really trying to kind of get in their own direction, working with David as a producer, what was his background? Like, did you feel that you were going in there, with his background that could align with you? Or like, what was it? Not just picking apart your songs, but what was kind of like how you would feel that, because there's one thing to say you're coaching, other
Sure.
things to say you're directing. Did you think
Sure.
that he was going to pull away your 80s flavor? What was
No,
like the
no.
main thing?
I didn't think that, but this might be a hard thing to explain. So, or at least for me. So when you write a song as a band, okay, in your mind, it's the greatest song in the world. It doesn't matter what it is. And you know this, you know plenty of musicians. It doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter if it's complete junk. To you, you wrote it. It's the greatest thing in the world, right? For me personally, when I grew up, for a lack of better terms, and we can get into this, I was a more closed-minded person. I really, for years, only listened to one band. I mean, I heard all the other bands on the radio, but and I'll just tell you, I'm a big, big, big original Van Halen fan. And so every day, that's all I listened to for years. I really didn't listen to the radio. And so the reason I tell you this is when we went to David and we read about David and his, the claims, that he did and who he worked with and stuff, we were driving up to his studio and Bubba took me inside and said, dude, you're going to have to be open-minded. And that stuck with me because we had put out our own music. We produced ourselves. We thought it was great. He went in there and he said, look, it's not bad, but here's the mistakes that you made. But he didn't do it in a way where like, look, man, you guys really screwed this up. Like, for instance, I'll give you a couple. Like, number one, this song right here, this was way too fast. You missed the beat. Like, he basically schooled us on what makes a song basically listenable that gets stuck in people's heads. It's not just the lyrics, it's the groove, which we all know that. But so it's little things like that. And some of the words were changed a little bit, like this word doesn't fit here. He did not say, okay, it's a good, rhythm, but I'm just going to change that. And I think that's what makes it special. It's a relief when you have a producer who does a line a little bit like, okay, we're not going to change it, but let me tell you what's going to help make it better. It really worked. So obviously when we went back to the second album, we knew what we were getting into. We had arranged the songs a little differently, more to his liking. We got it to where at least he was like, okay, it's not bad. But I think that's the thing. It was almost like he was another member of the band. And I think that really helped all of us.
Yes, yes. I have to say the way you described that is really great, especially, referencing Van Halen and being a fan of Van Halen, because Van Halen has a very large catalog to their
Sure.
name, especially being a drummer. I could think of so many different songs and so many different ways. The songs, they kind of twist and turn with Van Halen. There's not one song that sounds like the other. And I think that's why they're one of the best. They're in the top in music because you can go from one song, like from Panama to, another song, and it's different, and it makes you feel different. And I think that music for the audience is not just the sound, but it's the feeling and the memories that are connected to music.
And it's funny you say that. The guys in the band are so tired of me talking about Van Halen. But the reason why I keep bringing it up is because when I first heard Van Halen, and I heard Van Halen when I was young, it did that for me. It changed my attitude. It changed a lot of things for me. I know it sounds cliche, but it's so true. It gave me more confidence in myself when I was that young, because here's a band that Tarzan is singing for him, because, David Lee had the long hair. Look, you had a mosh of just great musicians, hard rock song. I don't know. It was dirty. It was gritty, but it was listenable, and then even the name Van Halen sounds tough. I don't know. All that did that for me when I was younger. As I've gotten to where we are today, and I will say this, I think it's a little sad in today's world because I don't think people have that same feeling about music when we were that way. And it makes me sad because there's some, take us out of the equation, which a lot of people haven't heard us, but there's some really great bands out there who are putting some original music out that's just getting missed. And it's a little sad for me, but It is what it is.
Well, times are changing, as they say, right? So
That is true.
when mentioning the name of Van Halen, how did you come up with the name of your band? Did the producer have something to do with it? Did you guys have something to do with it? Like, where does this come from? I always find that so interesting.
Well, I'm about to burst your bubble on that because really the story I'm going to tell you is not very interesting. We actually had written the song, the title track, Red Rain, before we came up with a band name. And we did like everybody else did. You look out the window, sky, ground, light, whatever, we came up with all kinds I don't know why. Static X was one we came up with, which I'm sure there's 50,000 Static X. Black Pearl, anything you watch on TV. I was watching, Pirates of the Caribbean. I was like, anybody call Black Pearl? That's a cool, we couldn't, we went through like 6 weeks of trying to come up with a name. And it might have been Larry, it might have been Bubba said, why don't we just call it Red Rain? Because that was the first song we had really, put down. And we, at the time, this was way before David. This is way before anybody even, we were still in a basement. We hadn't even played a show. And Larry had sort of drawn out the first logo, which we don't use anymore, but that first logo. And we looked at it, we said, yep, that's it. It's not an interesting story, but that's really how it happened. So we really named ourselves after one of our own songs.
Yes. So just so the audience knows, it's Red Rain, Reign, not
That's correct.
Rain.
That's correct. It's like King Rain. So,
raining, like
rain.
Charge or in charge, kind of a feeling. It's funny because when I was looking at the name and I was saying it, I was thinking of, there's another 80s song that says, Red Rain Keeps Falling Down. And I'm like,
it's a Peter Gabriel song.
Yes.
Yep.
And that is a very 80s song. But that's why I said that, just so the audience knows it's not spelled the same way. So that's good.
So I'll tell you a quick funny story about that. We did a show a couple years ago with Extreme. We were coming in, they were doing their sound check, and we were walking in, and all of a sudden they stopped their sound check. I guess I was the last one to walk in, and they turned around, they saw us come in, and they started playing Red Rain by Peter Gabriel, which was pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
Awesome.
And, yeah, it was really cool. And I walked in, and of course I'm the last one in. The guys, and I kept thinking to myself, this isn't their. I couldn't remember. I knew it was Red Rain. I couldn't remember it was Peter Gabriel, but I was like, this isn't their song. That's all I remember. Kept saying to myself. But they were, and again, ended up being very gracious, very nice people. Talked to them for a while, but I thought that was pretty funny that they just stopped that and started singing that.
That's so great. So when you got together, when was the first time you were saying, okay, now we're going to start touring with people? Because I do know you have a relationship with George Lynch from Dokken. I do know that he did play on Don't Look Back, and we're going to talk about that. But you've also played with other bands.
Sure.
I had mentioned Extreme, Jackyl, Lita Ford, Tesla. There's other bands. I mean, you have quite a few of them. So pick out a couple of those bands or a couple of those performances that you can actually say, like, wow, like they stand out from the rest, or it made Red Rain, made us realize as a band, like how far we've come as a band, Red Rain.
So our very first well, I shouldn't say our first one. Our first one was sort of a charity show here in Richmond, but our very first performance as a 4-piece was an opening for Lita Ford. Sometimes I don't like to mention these names because it sounds like you're bragging, and so I try not to be like, oh, name dropper, but that was our very first one, and that sort of helped us get on the map a little bit. Chip took that and we ran with that, obviously. The next tour was with Tesla, was our first tour with Tesla. We've actually sort of toured with them on and off for a couple years, but the first one was in 2000, towards 2017. I guess that really hit it to me that and again, I don't want to say we made it because we haven't made it, and we're still climbing the rock, but that's when I realized, okay, we're in a different atmosphere now, because I was a Tesla fan growing up. I loved Tesla, and now again, when and I'll probably say this word 1,000 times, surreal, but now you're standing literally on the same stage with them. You're conversing with them. We've been very fortunate of all the bands that were gracious to us. Each act that we've played with, there's always something there. And I'll go into that in a minute. But so when we hit the first tour of Teslas, I think as we realized we were a little bit in a different atmosphere than we were used to. And then after Tesla, then shows started coming up. And I'll name some other ones maybe you didn't. And if you did, and I don't mean to cross over, we've played with Quiet Riot quite a few times. Slaughter, Winger. And again, the reason I mentioned that is like Winger, Rod Morgenstein is a drummer. Wow. And I mean, Dokken, I think you mentioned, but Mickey, for me, I can't speak for the other guys because they spoke to everybody else. Extreme, like I mentioned. I mean, who wouldn't want to be in the same room as not even with the band, but Nuno? You know what I mean? Phenomenal. And so those are the feelings you feel, but you also have to walk in saying, "Hey, we belong here," and you can't be that that star chaser. And I'm using this example; it never happened, so I'm just saying. But like, if a guy like Nuno walks over and goes, "Hey guys, how you going?" You're just like, "Hey man, nice to see you." Not like, "Oh my God, will you sign this?" You have to sort of take on that persona, like we belong here, we need to be here, and so yeah, we learned that early, and we were lucky. And so we've played with a lot of bands, and some I haven't even mentioned, but I will tell you, the last band that we did do, and again, every experience was great, but this one has left us with a lasting experience. Maybe it was the last band, was LA Guns. They were so good to us. They actually, we did about a little bit over a week and a half run with them. We were asked to kind of finish it, and unfortunately, due to certain aspects of our lives, we couldn't do it. But it was every show we play makes a difference in your life. But ending with that one, because that we haven't really played since then due to some other issues, but that one has left a lasting impression on us.
Wow. So it's so exciting to see that you've been paired up with some of these phenomenal musicians and bands that are in the history of music. Out of all of those experiences, and I know all of those bands are very, very different, what would you say if you were just to kind of think about it? If you had two choices, what two bands would match perfectly with the sound of Red Rain? Because this will actually help the audience that hasn't heard your music
Right.
to say, oh, that would pair well. Because a lot of times you go to a show and like you're there for the main act, and then they whip out this band, and you're like, I never heard of them. But then all of a sudden you find yourself like looking them up on social media or like streaming their music. And you're like, I just heard them once open for this band, but now I'm a fan
Sure.
of them. Maybe two bands that you think would be a perfect pair.
Wow, that's a great question, and it's a hard one to answer because really, with our style of music, and I know this is not it's not a cop out, but we've been lucky to find the bands that we gel with very well. I would say LA Guns was one, sort of that when almost like, but their first album, I bought their first album when it came out. It's a little more. I don't mean this in a derogatory. It's a little more sleazier rock than what we are. God, that's a great question. It's a hard question. I don't even know if I can name two bands. I really don't
That's
because
fine. I get it.
because
Yeah.
our EP was a little bit, very slightly a little bit diverse. Like I said, Not That Way's a little more radio-ish. Like, so when we played with like Slaughter, and Jackyl, like that song would sort of meld with that, if that, mix with that. So I mean, we Tesla maybe, but Tesla was a little more radio friendlier than we have. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. That's hard. I don't want to pigeonhole that.
Wow. Okay. All right. Maybe I stumped you. I don't know. It's a
But
it's
I
a
think
good
you
one.
did.
I
I
think
will say this.
it is a
I
good
will say
one.
this. There was an article written about us. I don't know if I agree with this, okay? But I'm just going to tell you. I did an interview, and they compared us to more of an Aerosmithish type Van Halen type Dokken. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. You
That's
know?
good. That's good. Yeah. Yeah, that's
I'm
very
I'm
good.
I'm quoting somebody else, and I'm sorry, whoever that was who wrote the article, and I'll find it, and I promise I'll write you and tell you I'll credit you. But that was which was written. I don't know if I believe that, because I also believe, and Bubba believes this too. He doesn't like when I mention stuff like that. He wants people who hear us to interpret it themselves. So you've heard our songs. Let me put you on the spot. Who would you think we would sort of fall into that with?
Well, just after listening to the bands that you've been paired up with, I would have to say if I had to pick two, I
Hmm.
would have to say I would definitely pair you up with Slaughter.
Okay.
Because Slaughter really has like a very different sound to them. So when you hear Slaughter, you actually say that's a Slaughter song, like without a doubt. Like you don't even have to look at the radio, and you're like, that's Slaughter. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
that to
Sure.
me,
Okay.
and I'll give you two more answers. One,
Okay.
I would have to say Tesla, but I would also have to say Firehouse, even though you hadn't played with them,
We
because
have played with them.
oh, you have. All right, then I
Yes,
would
I'm
say
sorry. I haven't mentioned every, yeah, but we
yeah.
we did we did we
Yeah,
did
I
play with
would
them.
say Firehouse because that to me is more radio. Like, so Tesla and Slaughter have a very unique sound. So you don't even
Sure.
have to see the screen of the radio and you're like, oh, that's them. but
Sure.
the sounds for the radio, I mean, CJ snare, I mean, it was amazing, but you just knew that's radio friendly. I mean,
Sure.
they were
Sure.
really big radio firehouse. So I would say those three, even though they're all different and they all sound different, but they're to me true 80s bands. And if you're gonna, say that you're an 80s band, you would want to be paired up with other real 80s bands.
Well, we're not an 80s band. I'm very careful to say that. Let me kind of elaborate on that. We are an 80s sounding band
Okay.
in a way. So the way we kind of our writing is Bubba pretty much comes in with the idea. He's got it sort of out mapped out. We bring it into rehearsal. Stevie adds his flair, Larry adds his. Obviously, I just drum along to it. But the bottom line is we're all fans of the 80s. So obviously we take pieces from the bands we love, right? So it does come out sounding 80s. And I mean, not that I'm not shying away from that, but I don't want people to think that they're gonna listen to the song and go, oh my God, this is Bullet Boys, or oh my God, this is this. We're not. And I don't even know if we tried to achieve it. It just got achieved that way. But we've taken the 80s model and sort of made it a little bit heavier, a little bit maybe a little bit different, that it's in more of a contemporary form. But yes, we are. I call us a power rock band. I don't even people call us a heavy metal band. We're not really heavy metal. I mean, if you think of heavy metal now, you think of Metallica, or even heavier than that. I mean, so that's why when I did sort of the logo, I couldn't think of a real slogan. I put American Rock Band, but we're a rock band. We are a power melodic rock band. Because there are some songs off the new album, like there's one or two songs that could be sort of a little bit more 90s sort of grunge thing. But yes, there is a lot of 80s flair in there. I'm very careful to say that, because I actually had somebody go, hey, you're not 80s at all. It doesn't sound like, and he's starting to, I was like, no, we don't sound like those bands. So I try to let people know, sort of where we think we stand. Now everybody hears it probably says, you're an 80s band, but I try to think a little outside of the box on that.
Okay. So thinking about mentioning, I want to mention one song before we go to Don't Look Back. I
Okay.
want to mention your website because it is so
Okay.
user friendly. I mean, it is really great. And in
Thank you.
looking at your website, I noticed your video and I said, "Oh, I have to watch this video." And the video is for a song called Here I Am.
That's correct.
And before it starts, there's actually several sentences about mental health. And
That's correct.
I really appreciate that. So, can you kind of talk for the audience sake on how you were able to bring that piece in and how that ties in? Because the video is so descriptive. I mean, even if you had your volume off, you would be able to tell what the messaging is. There's characters holding up signs, and then the signs that are so negative in the beginning change to be positive. So,
To start, the album Don't Look Back was written over COVID, just so you know. So a lot of the songs are COVID related. Don't look back, that part of the life, because everything's shut down. And I'm going to kind of give you a little lead in, and then I'll get into Here I Am, if you don't mind. That's what Don't Look Back's about. Like, okay, sort of when the songs were being written, COVID restrictions were getting a little bit less and less. So, Don't Look Back's like, okay, that part of our chapter's gone. We went through something that nobody's ever gone through. And so let's not look back, let's move forward. And so when we got to, again, I'll throw another song before I get to hear him. Like Bury Me Up to My Eyes is a song off the album. That song is about looking through life through a mask, because we all wore masks, right? So that's what that's about. Here I Am was a song about obviously depression, people who were isolated, because again, it wasn't just because of COVID. Obviously, there are people who feel like this every day, but some of us, and I'll be the first one to admit, I don't know what another human being goes through. I don't, at this point in my life, don't know what depression looks like, to the point where the only solution is the one solution we all, unfortunately, is not the one we all want to think about. But when we all went through COVID, I think everybody who hasn't felt depression or hasn't felt it, because we were isolated, right? And that's not really what people do. The song was written by Bubba about, listen, not only people of every day, but people who really struggle with mental health, depression, doesn't feel like they can get through life. everyday struggles. The song is written about, listen, there are people who are willing to help you if you just reach out. If you just call a friend and say, hey, I'm really having some bad thoughts. The song is basically about, you know what? If you just reach out, here I am. Here I am to help. Please, please, because none of us want to see somebody at any age take that final last, what they think is the only way out. And so that's what the song is written about. We had a great company do the video. I had a little bit of an idea of what I wanted. I knew my idea was to have that message at the end of the video, but our video people, I give them all the credit in the world. They're the ones that really came up with the idea of holding the signs and doing those. They did such a wonderful job. Monica and Tim, their production company is escaping me, and I really need to tell it who it is, but they're the ones that really came up with the idea of the signs and all that. So it's a powerful song. Some of the shows we've played, even some of the bands that we have come up to us going, man, that is a hell of a song. So we're very proud of that song. And it's a good song.
Absolutely. I definitely think that the messaging in that is so important. You know, it's not going away. So I think that unfortunately, it's a message that has to be reinstated. So tell me about Don't Look Back, just the song in particular and how you got connected with George Lynch.
Again, Don't Look Back was already written. And again, it was during the COVID period. And we were in a little bit of a rut at the time because we had just gotten off. When COVID hit, we had just finished another run with Tesla, literally a week before everything was shut down, right? I won't go too far into it, but I said to myself, you know, we've done this run for a couple years on this little EP. We have this full-length album. I need to make a splash. We hadn't put anything out. What do we do? I had thought of guest vocalist. I thought of guest guitarist. I just sat and thought, I got to make a splash if we're going to do this. Well, not to go down the rabbit hole, I know somebody who knows the whole original Dokken camp very, very well. Very well. And so I called him up and I said, hey, what do you think about this? And he said, it'll be done. And so he brokered it for us. And again, I'm skipping over a lot of the parts, but he brokered it for us. Talked to George. George was in agreement. We sent George the song, and George blazed through the song, which is what I wanted. You know, I wanted, the one thing that I wanted old school Dokken George Lynch. You know, this was a couple years ago, so he was sort of removed from that and was doing his own stuff. But I wanted the old George Lynch, and I feel like we got that on that song. And that's how we were able to get him. We were, and he was. I actually spoke to him on the phone, and he was most gracious. That's all I can say about him.
Yes, well, he is. He's really top notch, that guy.
Yeah,
A true gentleman, I have to say. I've been around them, and I have to say he's a true gentleman, but he's also, his career speaks for itself, and of course, his guitar playing speaks for itself.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's just incredible. So that must be another inspiration for the band, to have someone like George play. Do you have any ideas of future music or future collaborations?
We have songs. I mean, we do have songs. Probably in the next year, we'll release something. We've already spoken to David. We're putting the touches on the songs before we give, we do our thing before we give it to him, before he critiques it and lets us know. So yes, the answer is yes. We'll have something new this year. I don't know when, but we should have at least one song. I don't know. I mean, the music business, and anybody who watches this knows the music business. Will we do another full-length album? I don't know. Will we continue to put out singles? Probably. I don't know what that looks like yet. I haven't gotten that far yet.
Sure. Well, this is a big month. This month is NAMM,
Yes.
and it's in Anaheim, California, like it is every year. And I understand that your band will be playing on January 22nd at the House of Blues, which is a Thursday night.
Correct.
So tell me about the lineup, or tell me about what that night's going to look like. What do you know about attending it?
It's Metal Allegiance, which is, an all-star heavy metal band. This is all I know yet because I'm still getting some pieces. There's, I believe, 3 bands and then Metal Allegiance. We are one of the bands. We're not the first band to open. I think we're the second slot. I don't know the other two bands, and I'm very sorry about that. I wasn't given that information yet, so it's not that I won't mention them. I just don't have that information. We were very excited to be asked to do this. My understanding, and I hope I don't get this wrong, is you have to be invited to play this show, and we were invited, which makes it even more special. So the farthest we've gone on tour was Fort Wayne, Indiana. So now we're going to take it a little further, and we're going to go coast to coast from Richmond to California. We're very excited about it. We're looking forward to it. The good news is also we're actually flying in Tuesday. We were asked to also be guests at the Metal Hall of Fame the Wednesday night before that. So we're going to be attending that as well. So it's going to be a whirlwind for us.
Wow. Yeah, that is really very exciting. But I am interested in attending House of Blues. I will be out there for NAMM, so I will be looking for you at that event. So that's great. Yeah.
That'll be great, yes.
Do you know how long your set is, or do you have a limit on the amount of songs?
It is. We have a 30-minute set. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 7 songs. Most of the songs are the Don't Look Back album. 2 of the songs will come from the EP, which will be obviously the title track, Red Rain, because, we're Red Rain. And then we do play Not That Way. Not That Way's really every show, that's the closing song. Anything between those 2 songs are all off the Don't Look Back album.
Wow, this is so exciting. Well, I look forward to meeting you in person. Can you tell the audience your social media, how they can download and stream your music, and where they can look for your future music acts in the future?
Sure. Is it okay if I mention one more thing? So while we were out on the road with LA Guns, we actually hit a town where David lived, our producer, and we ended up recording the show. We will be releasing a 5-song live EP, and it's us live. That's it. It's us playing live. I'm making that very clear. We don't have backing vocals. It's us. And, I think sometimes it's really cool that you hear a band live, so you also that you know what you're getting. So that'll be coming out within a couple weeks. We're very excited about that. And then you will be able to find these tracks where you'll find everybody. So we're on every downloadable music site, Apple Music, Google, Amazon, anything that you can download music. It's Red Rain, REIGN. Our website is redrainband.com. Same on Facebook. Basically, same with all of our socials. We're Red Rain Band, REDREIGN. Twitter, Instagram, it's all the same. And so, yeah, that's how you can find us. We are on YouTube as well. You got to type in Red Rain Band. The band's the important part. So we have a lot of videos there. Here I Am's there. We actually have a Red Rain video we did as well. We have a lot of live videos because we believe in that. It's one thing to put an album out, but it's, people want to know what you sound like, raw. And so that's why we're very excited about doing this EP, because you'll get a real sense of how we play live. So yeah, anywhere that's social media, if you just put Red Rain Band, you'll find us.
Wow, great. Well, I look forward to meeting you at House of Blues on January 22nd. Thank you to Chipster PR and Deco Records, and thank you for being a guest on our show.
I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you helping us spread the word of all original music. That's a hard thing to do. Thank you very much, and I really look forward to meeting you as well out there in Anaheim.
Thank you. Sammy Lee, drummer from Red Rain. Thank you again.
and we let it slip away. I'm not the same. Everything was in vain. I close the door so tight and walk away. Oh yeah, oh, but it's not that way. Not that way, yeah. You had broke my heart and you cannot avoid the blame. Never be the same place of the pain. Yeah, yeah. It's not the same. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I close the door so tight and walk away. Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Walk away. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Walk away. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You have been listening to Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Adele, professional psychic medium, Dream Central Station, LLC. My audio editor is Al Hemberger at the Loft Recording Studios in Bronxville, New York. This is WNEW 102.7 FM radio.